Joan Neuberger, for coming and speaking tonight in the first of a series of talks that the Center hopes to sponsor and co-sponsor this year. This is important for a couple of reasons. The first being, of course, the value of the talk and the knowledge and expertise of the speakers, but also this series will educate campus faculty, staff, and students as to what the Digital Center is and does. The DSC is an academic center for research and education, and the center will help kickstart, facilitate, support, and promote projects that are made possible or explore the convergence of digital convergence with the humanities as well as the natural and social sciences. The nature of digital studies and the center is one of collaboration. So it's our goal to bring faculty and students together to work side by side across disciplines. Projects will result in theoretical, critical, and practical works. And tonight, Dr. Neuberger will demonstrate such forms for us. Furthermore, the DSC will offer programming in the forms of workshops and project presentations and demonstrations, and will also offer a certificate in digital humanities for undergraduates at Rutgers starting this spring. So I'm very excited for the times ahead, which begins right now. So Dr. Bernstein will come up and introduce tonight's guest. Thank you.
Thank you. Clemens, is this good time? Okay. It is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, Joan Neuberger. She has her graduate degrees from Stanford University and her BA in Russian from Grinnell College. She's been at the University of Texas at Austin since 1990 and was promoted to full professor in 2007. She's received awards from the National Council for Eurasian and East European Research, the Kennan Institute for Advanced Studies at the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars, from the Hoover Institution, and the International Research Exchange. As a scholar, Dr. Neuberger wears multiple hats. The one I am most familiar with is the hat of a Russian historian, author of numerous articles on Imperial Russia, as well as the books Hooliganism, Crime, Culture, and Power in St. Petersburg, 1900 to 1914, UC Press, 1993, and Ivan the Terrible, the Film Companion, 2003, co-editor with University of Michigan's Valerie Kittleson of Picturing Russia, Explorations in Visual Culture, published by Yale in 2008, co-editor with University of North Carolina's Louise McReynolds of Imitations of Life, 2 Centuries of Melodrama in Russia, published by Duke in 2001. Dr. Neuberger is well known and tremendously respected among our colleagues in Russian and Soviet history. Co-author of Europe and the Making of Modernity, 1815 to 1914, published by Oxford in 2005, with the late Robin Winks. She's also shaping our visions of European history. In fact, Dr. Lees is using this text in his spring survey course. But then there's the hat that she's wearing tonight as the inaugural speaker for our new Digital Studies Center. Way back in the previous century, really in the last millennium, Dr. Neuberger's book on hooliganism was one of 18 chosen by the University of California Press for what was its brand new online publication series in 1999. Since the millennium, she's ventured more seriously into the digital world, creating a documentary called The Politics and History of Ivan for the Criterion Collection DVD Eisenstein, The Sound Years. Ask her anything you want about the great Soviet-era director Sergei Eisenstein, the subject of her forthcoming book. This evening, she's going to tell us about her work since 2010 as editor of Not Even Past, a rich website whose title harkens back to William Faulkner's eerie words, "The past is never dead, it's not even past." According to the site, quoting now, the title of the website reflects our professional and ethical commitment to understanding history as a public conversation about the importance of the past for our actions, values, and beliefs in the present, and for the decisions we make today that will affect our lives and those who come after us tomorrow. And I hope you'll allow me a personal recollection before I turn the podium over to Dr. Neuberger. In 1983, she took the Trans-Siberian Railroad from Moscow, where she spent a year at Moscow State University, all the way to China, Accompanying her were Charters Wynn, a fellow graduate student at Stanford, and Robert Weinberg, my fellow graduate student at the University of California, Berkeley. They had many, many adventures on their train, to say the least, in China, and during their year together doing dissertation research in what was then the Soviet Union. Joan and Charters were married at the time. Bob and I got married in 1986, and we were kind of famous or infamous as the two Northern California Russian history couples. Thanks to Bob Weinberg, I've had the privilege of getting to know Joan Neuberger as an esteemed colleague and a very good friend for these last 30 years. We've met at conferences, we've been to Russia together, we've watched our children grow up. We once made a stab at Texas two-stepping, not much success. In any case, I am delighted, I am proud to have her here with us in Camden. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank somebody else. Thank you to the March. And yes, thank you for sponsoring this talk. I'm very proud to have the chance to talk about Not Even Past as the inaugural speaker for this center. I think it's really exciting to see institutions all over the country starting digital history centers. Should I speak into the microphone, or is it okay if I talk like this? What do you say?
The microphone is better.
Microphone's better. Okay, how's that? Good? Okay, good. Okay, let me start by saying that I am not trained as a public historian. As you could probably tell from the introduction, I'm not trained as a digital historian. Everything that I know about public history and digital history I've learned either by accident or by trial and error, or from my graduate assistants, my graduate student assistants who've been invaluable in this whole project. But I'm a real convert. I believe that the internet offers us really unprecedented possibilities for taking professional knowledge out to the public, and especially for breaking down the border between, that often is conceived as being a huge obstacle between the university and the public. And so what I want to do tonight is talk about this experiment that we've been doing in public history through digital means at the University of Texas at Austin. That is the website Not Even Past. What I'll do is talk about what we're doing, and then I'll talk a bit about how we measure the success of the website and what our challenges still are and where we're moving in the future, how we're trying to address those challenges. So let me just, you've been staring at the homepage for a little while, and this is I actually put up our feature for October a day early so I could show it to you. Every month we feature a book by a faculty member at in the history department at UT. And this month we're featuring a book that I think is going to be incredibly important and for a long time, and for both within the academy and for the public. And that is Denise Spellberg's book on Jefferson's Quran. And what we do is we feature a book each month, and the author writes about 1,000 words, a little essay. Sometimes it's from the introduction of the book. Sometimes it's a single section of the book or an anecdote or something like that. And then we post that. Usually we illustrate it. We like lots of pictures. Usually we have links. We don't usually use footnotes, but in this case, because this was a commercially published book, we needed to make it look exactly like the book. And then the author also suggests further reading for people who want to delve deeper into that subject. And that takes us to here, where the author of the book writes a few sentences about further reading. And that we do every month. This is a way of promoting the faculty to the public, but also a way of bringing the best of what we're doing, writing about the best of what we're doing in a very accessible and accessible style, making it available. The main thing, let me go back and talk about how this all got started. About 10 years ago, the chair of our department figured out that he was going to have to raise money on his own for the department. Follow the money, right? And he got together a group of alumni, some local Texas active people who love history, basically, from all walks of life. And they gathered in Austin once a year. And 3 or 4 years ago, they said that that we should start a book blog. They're the kind of people who read every history book that's on the New York Times bestseller list, and then when they finish reading those books, they don't know what else to read. So they wanted professional historians to help them figure out what to read and write little reviews of them. The chair presented this to the department as if this was yet another burden that we were going to have to fulfill for someone. And yet, I thought it was a great idea. And there were a couple members of the faculty thought it was a terrific idea. But a book blog, that wasn't anywhere near enough. We could write about movies, we could write about photographs, we could write about anything. We could do a lot more than just write about books. So I thought this was a terrific idea. And I started working with one of the members of that committee, a consultant for the department who had a lot of connections with design people in town. We met with a number of design firms to help design the homepage and the interior pages. And we met with members of the faculty. I started looking around online to see what other kinds of websites were out there. And I realized that although there were a number of history websites, an increasing number of history blogs, there wasn't anything like a kind of popular history magazine. Well, there were some, but there was nothing quite like what we wanted to do. So our target audience is our alumni, 11,000 history majors, 11,000 people have graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a major in history, and anyone else who liked history. And then we decided books would be our sort of main subject, but that we could write about a lot of other things as well. So that's what we did. And in 2010, we launched this. And luckily, one of my colleagues, started asking around, how are we going to get people to write for this? Everyone's really busy. No one wants something else to do. Well, it turned out that some people actually enjoyed having the opportunity to write for a popular audience or just write short pieces about things that they were working on. And one of my colleagues suggested we get grad students to do the book reviews. Because what do they do all day long? They write about books. They write book reviews for every class, every book they read, in every class they take, every seminar they take. Well, that was really a stroke of luck on my part. Because that is basically, the grad students have been a major source of articles, particularly book reviews. So we divide them up geographically. And we originally were going to have some videos. You can see there's some things that have already become obsolete. We have the featured reads that are connected with our feature. And then whatever books students want to write about. I do a lot of editing. Most of the students turn in, they either try and revise them themselves to make them more accessible. I give them a set of instructions about how to avoid jargon and things like that, not spend too much time talking about the argument, but give people a reason to read the book. Because that's what they want. We're not really looking for critical book reviews, but rather book recommendations for people who love history. So that's kind of our life's place. Those are most of our articles are books, but we also write about movies and all sorts of movies. From I Am Cuba, which is a 1960s Soviet-Cuban co-production, to this is a great documentary, if you haven't seen it, about a group of Australian Aborigine singers who ended up in Vietnam in the 60s singing to the troops. It's a fantastic documentary. We also do articles on popular movies like Spielberg's Lincoln, like Django Unchained, and those get a lot of attention, those get a lot of hits. So we do films. What else do we do? The other thing that faculty contribute to most is our Discover section. I wanted to call this Documents, but it turned out none of the people who weren't historians or scholars knew what documents were. So we decided we had to come up with something else. But we do, as you can see, text and images. And I just try and tell faculty members, take something from a lecture. Give me something from your research. It can be something you published already. I really work hard at trying to make this easy for the faculty because they're busy and they don't get paid and they feel unappreciated. So, one of the things that's really interesting for me is seeing which of these articles are popular. I'm always wrong. So one of the things that's been really popular, it's on the front page, I'm not going to go look for it, is an article written by our Atlantic historian, early modern Atlantic historian, about John Winthrop's original sermon about the city on a hill, where the phrase that Reagan and before him Kennedy used about the city on the hill. That is our most popular article in this Discover section. Another, anything on slavery is the second most popular thing. And then the third most popular thing, we have a whole series on video games. So we all know that there are lots of historical movies, but and people are really interested in what the movies are really about, or what mistakes they made, that kind of thing. But it turns out that there are a lot of very, very popular video games with historical narratives. And we happen to have a graduate student who loves writing about the historical narratives of video games. So we do a lot of those as well. We did a survey at the beginning of this project to see what kind of history people were interested in, and this also really surprised me. US history was first, not really that big of a surprise, but Texas history was second. So we tried really hard to do some Texas history, but we don't really have any Texas historians anymore. Our last Texas historian retired, and we haven't hired anyone yet, so we find ways to do various things about Texas. And then we originally had a grad student who was doing oral histories and suggested we do a listen section with oral histories. That's been a little hard to keep up to. So as you can see, it's kind of a learning process. Some things work well, some things we develop, some things we don't develop. Another thing that we decided to do during the summer, so that all of us can take a little break, we published the winners of the Texas History Day competition. I'm sure you have you have New Jersey History Day here, whether you know it or not. I don't know anyone participate in this. It's a huge project. If you have junior high school kids, they have to do it. High school kids, it's required in Texas. And they compete, they do projects of all kinds. Go back here. You can see they can make websites, they can write papers, videos, performances, exhibits. They're fantastic. The quality, especially of the videos and of the papers and the websites, is really extraordinary. Very well researched, beautifully put together. So it's been a pleasure to be able to publicize them, and that's also a way for us to reach out to students all over the state, people who normally might not think twice much or even once about the University of Texas in Austin are having their work publicized on the flagship university's website. And this has been a really gratifying thing that we do. Then it turns out we had a bunch of things that didn't fit into any other categories, so we started a blog, and that's just for all sorts of things. This year we decided, we have a gender symposium that is run by grad students, meets every 2 weeks. They have a talk, and this year we decided to start live tweeting it, and then the graduate students who organize it write a summary afterwards, and we post the summary. So that's actually gotten us a lot more followers on Twitter, and we're really looking forward to developing that as a series. We have a pretty robust Facebook page. We encourage people to like us on Facebook. Please do like us on Facebook and follow us in this way. What you're seeing is the administrators page. But we do announcements every time we publish a new article. We announce it on Facebook. Often, my assistant and I, if we see something interesting on some other website, we just also link to it there. We have a number of other websites that we cooperate with, and we'll always repost, cross-post their stuff on our Facebook and our Twitter page as well. And Twitter's been an incredibly useful learning tool for me, because I can follow what other historians are doing online. I've been able to learn a lot about digital history from the people tweeting about digital history, and a lot about public history. In fact, Mary Rizzo, I started following. There you are. Just very recently, because I saw something that she posted on public history. So it's been a great source for me, and then it's also a place where we publicize what we're doing. So how are we doing? The first semester that I did this was horrible. And everyone who's ever taught a class for the first time, multiply times 10, because not only did I have students who were watching, but I had the chair of my department and all these really eager donors and people who were consulting the department, waiting to see if this was going to work, or if really we should have just done a little book blog. And originally I thought we'd post an article a day. That was a really bad idea. Anyone, I see some people shaking their head, right? Forget it, that was ridiculous. But we have a pretty steady pace now of 2 articles a week, usually a book review and a Discover or some other piece. And that's really pretty, that's pretty good, that's good enough. So we're pretty happy with that. All the people who wanted us to put together a website are very happy with it now. So as far as I'm concerned, that's enough success. But we have other forms of measuring our success as well. It's turned out to be a huge benefit to the grad students. They get to write book reviews, which if first and second year graduate students don't get to get published. So they get lines on their CV from the first year of graduate school. And that gives them the kind of confidence, that gives them a certain amount of confidence for one thing. But it also gives them a second form of writing. They learn a lot about writing for a public audience from writing for non-text. And they can see that it's different than writing for their professors. And some of them figure out that it's actually better than the way they've been writing for their professors. And they can use that to learn to write more directly, more simply, and more persuasively by just being more sort of accessible. And that's been for me one of the most gratifying things. I've met a lot more of our grad students for one thing, but I've also seen them develop new skills. And I think that's been an incredible benefit. The same thing happens with faculty. This is the most surprising thing. 80% of the faculty in our department have actually contributed to the website. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. My husband likes to make fun of me for this because he thinks I could twist anybody's arm basically to do anything. But I really work hard to try and make this easy for people. And then they discovered that they can also write more accessibly than they thought they could. And it's really gratifying for them to see their work online as well. Because we're all used to writing something and waiting years before it comes out. And here it is in this beautiful form, often really nicely illustrated. This is a wonderful article by Jackie Jones, a great historian, MacArthur Winning historian, about her mother, a poem that her mother wrote to her father before she was born, when he went off to World War II to fight in World War II, about her anxiety about his fate, but also about how this very gentle, beautiful man was going to go out and kill people. Something that she was very, very concerned about. It's really a beautiful piece that she wrote in a style that she really had not been writing in. So that's been, I think that's been a real benefit. It's a great promotion tool for the department. Originally, as I said, we thought our audience would be alumni, and then hopefully everyone who loves history everywhere. I don't think we quite got there yet, but one of the things that I didn't expect is that historians from all over the country, professional historians, know about the website, and they love it. And we get lots and lots of feedback from people all over the country who use it in their classes or who just read it themselves, and really enjoy it. And that's great, but it also has put us on the map as a department that's doing something digital. And since everyone's trying to figure out how to do that, what they can do that's somehow digital, or what they can do that's somehow public, it's been very gratifying to have people from around the country say that this is a model that they enjoy. How else do we measure success? Well, the other way is by the number of hits. And that's all. Anyone who's ever run a website or written a blog, it's pretty much all you think about, right? How many hits can you get? How can you increase them, and so on. I just discovered in September, August really, that over the last year, the number of hits that we've been, our number of hits doubled last January. I didn't even realize this until just this month. Before that, we were pretty steadily getting 3,000–4,000 hits a month. Respectable, not very much really. And now, but suddenly we started getting in the 9,000–10,000 hits a month area. And that's very respectable. That's good. It's the same number of hits that one of the other history departments that has a website is Ohio State. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Origins. They write once a month. They write long articles that are historical background of contemporary events. And the reason I'm really happy about matching their hit rate, because I've been holding out for 2 years against the need to write contemporary history or to write articles about current events. If we can do it, if someone wants to do it, that's fine, I'm all for it. But I think that as historians, we should be talking to people who want to read history and not feel like we need to do something contemporary. And so when we could get the same number of hits as this contemporary-oriented website, that was a really good benchmark for us. We use it as a basis for fundraising for the department. So that was, of course, one of the original purposes in reaching out to our alumni. So we ran a fundraiser last October, and we made $5,000. Not nothing. It's useful. It now pays for the website, so it pays for itself. It paid for me to hire an extra graduate student who we're using to develop some new projects. So that was successful. I thought we were going to make twice that amount, so you always have a lot to work for. But that's pretty good, respectable. How else can we measure success? We get mentioned some of the articles have been picked up by the Atlantic blog. We've gotten mentioned in a few other sort of history blogs, History Carnival, some other things like that. Nowhere near as much as I would like. We have some grad students who started a history journal last fall actually, and one of their editors is a former journalist. He has a lot of journalist connections, and they get picked up about once a month. One of their articles gets picked up by a bigger blog. And it's a little mysterious why. I don't quite know why. I think it has to do with his journalist connections, but I'm not quite sure. One of the things you discover by doing a project like this is that no one really knows how the internet works, or why people read things or don't read other things. It's all a little bit mysterious, but we're working on using Google Analytics to try and help us understand. There's a lot of information on Google Analytics to figure out how people are using our website. But actually figuring that out is a huge research project itself. There are a lot of history websites out there. I don't know how many of you read history blogs or are interested in your own fields, those of you who aren't historians. Not Even Passage is one of many. I think we offer something relatively unique. If you can be relatively unique, Lauren will probably tell me no, you can't be. We're still just one of many. And I've decided that kind of redundancy at this point in time is not necessarily a bad thing. That we have our own audience. It may be the only history magazine that they look at. It may be one of many. They may not look at it in a lot of detail, but we have a community that we're building. One of the things I discovered looking at Google Analytics is that 70 to 75% of our readers, of our hits, are new users, and that's very consistent. That's consistent from 2.5 years ago until today. And at first I was really depressed about this. Well, only 25% of readers are regular readers. So of those 4,000 to 10,000, only, you do the math, only 20% are actually regular readers. And then I took a lot of solace from Dan Cohn, who's one of many of you may know, is the librarian of the Digital Public Library of America, pioneer in the field of doing digital history. He has a blog, and he wrote not long ago that exactly the same thing. That this was really depressing to discover that 75% of his readers were first-time users, meaning they just saw looked up something on Google, were directed to his website, and he only stayed for a few seconds and left, right? But what he said is that other 20% is really his community. That's who he writes for. And those are the readers worth developing. And as you develop those readers, then your numbers, that group will grow. And that's who we write for. And I took a lot of solace in that. That's actually a large enough community. And I think an important way, a good way to think about it. Nonetheless, I would really like more. And I'd like to be doing different things. There are some things that we just have not been able to do. Because it's sort of a random collection of articles, people often say, why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? And I say, I can't do anything unless I have a faculty member or a graduate student who's willing to write about it. I can't go to faculty members and say, why don't you write a whole series on blah, 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 So as a result, the content is relatively random. That means that we aren't really useful for middle school or high school teachers to use as a resource for anything other than an article here or there, or maybe a model for how people write book recommendations or something like that. And so, last fall, some of you may have read that Texas can be a little reactionary, especially in our textbook policy, right? Last summer, there was a whole move to get textbooks and high school teachers to adopt things like teaching the good side of slavery and elevating Jefferson Davis to the same level as Lincoln when we talk about him. Well, I find this very disturbing, and so I was thinking about how we could use our resources to challenge that sort of thinking and to provide really, credible history. And at the same time, the outreach director for our international studies programs was looking for a way to provide some kind of more a series of resources for teachers who are suddenly having to teach world history after not having to teach world history. It was introduced into the public school curriculum. And we started talking, and we came up with this idea of 15-minute history. So this is our second project. This is a spin-off that we started last year. These are approximately 15-minute podcasts on a whole range of topics. We've just, as you can see from this, we just published our 27th episode. We launched it last October, and we try to post one or two a month, sometimes once a week when we have a lot. And what we do, well, here, let's go back to the index. Here are the topics that we've posted on. Everything from the Ottoman Empire was our most popular topic, believe it or not. Who knows what people are reading what. But we started off with our own topics, so I interviewed him, talking about Islamic extremism in the modern world, and he interviewed me about the Russian Revolution. And then what we do is we sync these to originally the Texas standards for world and U.S. history, and now we're syncing them to the U.S. standards, to national core standards that are, for better or worse, being adopted in the K-12 or the middle school and high school curriculum. As you can see, we align them here. But let's just we'll take international eugenics. So we did an interview with Philippa Levine, who had just finished editing a book on eugenics around the world. We provide the transcript of the podcast. Usually throw in a few pictures. This one actually was also an article on Not Even Past. And then, this was a long one. We get down to the bottom, we show how it syncs to the standards. We have we try and find an online documents, collection of online documents, and then further reading, and then the standards alignment. That's turned out to be a really popular series. You can subscribe to it on iTunes. The University of Texas at Austin just started its own iTunes U page with posted video lectures and so on, and podcasts. And 15-minute history is by far the most popular of the iTunes U University of Texas websites. Very excited about that. And we're just continuing with this sort of random series of articles or of podcasts that our faculty and grad students want to do. Chris, my collaborator on this, goes around and does teacher training, and this is something, last year when he announced that we were launching it, he got a standing ovation. This was so helpful for teachers, it's helpful for students to study for anything. A lot of people like podcasts. So that's been a really fun project, and that was our first big spin-off. So this has been really helpful for teachers, which is good. But we still want more, right? We want more hits. And this is the last thing I'll talk about. And so we wanted something more interactive as well. We wanted something where to draw in readers, more readers, and something where readers could think about history in terms of their own lives. So we have a new project which we haven't launched yet, called Our Stories, Our Histories. And it's based on, does anyone know the website Cowbird? It's a storytelling website. People can just sign up and write stories. And it's been used for special projects, like after after Sandy hurricane last year, I know you're all right here. This is much more relevant to you than to us way down there. They used a Cowbird site to collect stories, orally or written, and photographs by anyone who was affected by the storm in any way. And actually, you can see it here because we haven't put up our site yet. But what we're going to do is encourage people to write their own history. So if you, in any way, anything about anything. So, for example, we didn't get started in time, but I really wanted to be started in time, for example, for the March on Washington's 50th anniversary. But we'll be, okay, so we'll be ready for the 50th anniversary of Kennedy's assassination. So we're going to advertise this heavily and say, what do you remember? Where were you? Who told you? How did it affect you? And we're going to be so we'll be doing that with anniversaries to try and get people engaged. But we already have stories, which we haven't posted yet because we haven't quite gotten it ready. We have a bunch of stories on the 60s by faculty members. One of my colleagues was a photojournalist in Berkeley in 1968, and he has wonderful memories. Well, he has memories and wonderful photographs of the People's Park demonstrations. And actually, Charters Wynn worked for the United Farm Workers during the Great Boycott, and he wrote an article, and we've got his, 35-year-old ID with really long hair and so on. What else? We have a story by one of our staff members in the history department about visiting the Hoover Dam and about then learning about its construction, and this was really exciting to him, so he wrote a little history about it. We're asking people to write about anything. Did you, is there a monument in your town? Did you preserve something? Did you fight in a war? Did you fight against war? Anything. So we're hoping that people, you, as a matter of fact, will write your history on our website, and we hope that that'll bring people in, and also then this will just, well, we're hoping that it'll bring people in. And of course, we want people to love history, so that's the main thing. But if we choose specific topics, like let's say Kennedy's assassination, and we get a whole slew of oral histories or eyewitness histories of some kind, then we'll have little archives of things that anyone can go and use to do research. Anyone, really, from professional historians doing research to students in classes to anyone who might be interested. So that's another way of sort of using the website to create something online that historians at all levels can use, and at the same time giving people another reason to love history and to love us at the University of Texas at Austin. So I'd love to know what you think about this. I'm always looking for ways to improve the website. So I'm going to stop there and see what kind of questions you might have, or comments, or criticisms, or anything else. What can I do for you? Any questions? Want to see more of it? Bob has a sheet of paper. I'd love to put you all on our mailing list. We send out a little email blast every other week with whatever news we've been posting. What do you think of our idea for having people write history online? Does that sound like a good idea to you? Does it seem like something you would do? Write a little history? Good. What are you going to write about?
Can you talk about the practical things about how much of your time this takes?
Sure.
How it fits into your overall
Absolutely.
duties at the university and so forth?
I went to the chair, volunteered to put this thing together, and said I would do it if you gave me a course reduction. So basically, instead of teaching 2 courses a semester, I teach 1 course at the University of Texas at Austin, and I teach 4,000 students a week, or whatever, 10,000 students a month online. And that's how it fits into my daily routine, right? I try, it's really convenient for me because I can do it sitting at home at any time of day. So that's, it's half of what I do. I have a graduate assistant, and I've been blessed with great assistants, so they're incredibly helpful. We split the posting, but they do a lot of the posting, and they've been incredibly resourceful at finding images that are in the public domain. We only use public domain images, except occasionally when we don't. and then we're sure to say that we use these things under fair use, and basically, if you want to sue us, go ahead. I even use something, well, anyway, I won't talk about that. Sometimes I try to really stay in the public domain. I could not have done this job if I didn't have great support from our instructional technology service, the liberal arts instructional technology service. I mentioned earlier that we went around to design companies in Austin. We actually hired a design company to build us a design. They didn't know anything about history or anything about sort of academics. And it was really hard. It was interesting. It was incredibly interesting for me because they really didn't have any idea what we were talking about. And it was hard to communicate to them what we were trying to do, even enough to develop a visual design that worked for us. And we got one eventually, and then we took it to the instructional people to code. And their design people looked at it and said, we can make this a whole lot better, and they did. They made it a lot better. Could have gone to them for free originally. And they've been extremely helpful throughout the process. We've changed things around a bit. I think we desperately need to to revise the homepage again. It really needs to be less text-oriented and more visual. But originally it was more visual. We had little pictures here. We didn't have titles, actually. It needs to not have this space here and here. I don't know why we do, actually, and how that happened. But unfortunately, our designers and our programmers have been completely swamped by their need to design for the MOOC project, which is taking over a big section of the university. So that's been really frustrating. But mostly they've been incredibly supportive and helpful. And anytime, something's always coming up. I mean, when we added the student page, we had to add a whole set of pages, for example. When we added the blog, they had to design a whole new page for it. We had to redesign the feature. I don't know if it's interesting to people. I mean, this took up a lot of my time. We had to redesign the video. Oh, by the way, we always have a video interview with which goes up in this page as well. And then we have an iTunes channel as well. So this page has been a work in progress, and they improved that. Who else did I have I need? Yes, yeah, go ahead.
This is kind of a question off this topic.
Yeah, great.
So, as a documentary filmmaker, digital tools and technology have really transformed how I'm the ecology. So I'm wondering if you could talk about how, not just to present, but how new digital technology have transformed the craft and the work of being a historian.
Okay, that is a huge topic, right? And in fact, I've written 2 blog pieces. I have a 3-part series, which was supposed to be finished last spring, but I got to part 3 and it was just too big. But basically, I would say that there are 3 ways in which digital technology has changed what historians do. The first way is that a lot of documents are digitalized. So there are a lot of documents are available online. We can do a lot of our research online. My students who do honors theses, who don't speak Russian, all of a sudden have huge stores of archives of documents that they can use to write an honors thesis or to do research for ordinary papers. So, and we all can do a lot more. So that's one way. The second way is that there's a lot of history writing online like this. There's a lot of blogging. There's a lot of conversations. So there's just a lot of writing online. Those are 2 ways. The third way is what I call digital history for real, because those first 2 things are things that we already do, right? We write and we do research. But as I'm sure you know, there are new tools for creating new kinds of documents. So there's a lot of mapping programming that people can use to create historical maps. They give people a different way of looking at a problem or even at a narrative. So, for example, Stanford has a great project on the Holocaust, and it's got a page where you can follow a timeline that kind of moves, kind of animated, and you can see where camps were constructed. And visually, you can see how the camps move into Poland from Germany, a few camps in Germany, and then a huge number of camps moving further east and around. And that is a whole new, I mean, you can maybe read about that, but this is a way of learning about that in a new way, right? There's a project at Harvard. Harvard also has an active digital history program. There's a young Russian historian there who's also doing a lot of mapping, and she's taking data from the 19th century, 18th and 19th century, and plotting it on maps. So you can look at layer, like overlay maps, like of the human body, for example. You look at historical overlay maps of, for example, there's a big rebellion at the end of the 18th century, the Pugachev Rebellion, and one of the overlays shows the path of the rebellion as it moved up this river. Another one shows where the troops were deployed. Another one shows where people were killed, nobles who were killed and the states were destroyed. This is a whole new way of thinking about, or a whole new kind of document for thinking about history. And I think these are really, really exciting, but at the same time, we were just talking at dinner, they're incredibly labor intensive, and they don't really produce that much yet. A lot of the sort of celebrated, there's a site called, I can't remember exactly what it is, it's Plotting Everyday Life in Harlem, this website. That's not what it's called, right? It's something like that. Everyday Life. Anyway, there you can pick different kinds of institutions, see where they were at different times in Harlem in the early part of the 20th century. But it takes an enormous amount of labor to put one of those together, and what you get is, okay, it's cool. They're visual. They give you a visual sense of things, which I think is great for undergraduate lectures. I think they make a point in a way that is more direct, less abstract, and I think really useful and effective. But I don't think we're quite at the point where we have the technology, or where we have the programming really, to make whole new kinds of data yet, but clearly we're going in that direction. That's really exciting. That answers your question. Yes?
Could you describe the editorial process?
The editorial process is me in my pajamas, working at home on my sofa. Let's see. I will post anything that is written well, and that is what I consider a reasonably high standard of persuasiveness. Let's say. I have a really hard time with things that are politically across the spectrum from where I am, and I often have someone else read them. Anything that might be politically sensitive, or might be sensitive to any demographic, I'll have someone else read it, so that it's not just me. But basically, I'm the editor, and we try to keep the labor, we try to keep this as unintensive labor as possible. So yeah, so it's me. Was that what you were asking? Who decides what gets posted? Yeah, and then I do a lot of editing of the writing. And I'm actually doing less than I used to do. I'm less concerned about real accessibility. I mean, I could rewrite all of these articles and make them way better. But, but you have to let people have their voice. So even if it's maybe not what you'd like it to be. So yeah, that's I think the editing process.
My question, why would you log into your site?
Oh, I log in. Okay. Okay, well, it's complicated. That's something we actually had to get rid of. Originally, we wanted people to register and log in because we wanted to know how many people were looking at it. It turned out that we did, and then we used that for part of our mailing list. We still have it up there because some people who registered that's how they hear from us. But that has gotten so spammed. And we keep trying to put up new blocks to the spamming, and partly again because my ideas people are so overloaded right now, we haven't been able to do anything. We also have comments. We used to have comments, which we have a queue so that I can moderate them, and that got so completely overwhelmed with spam that we just turned it off. And that's something that's an ongoing project. But I log in order to edit, but that's a different kind of login. Yes, there was some other, yeah.
I was curious whether any
transformed, I'm sorry?
Your approach to Russian history and your published scholarship.
I wouldn't say it's actually changed the way I'm doing my own research. Well, there's a lot more research online, I think, or writing this particular book that I'm working on. But it has made me think about starting another project. I'm thinking about a cooperative project with some Russian scholars on a website or a blog about Russian images that would be a joint Russian. But it's, it's sort of, I would say not very much, actually. I mean, this would be just a joint project that would be fun to do, that we could do online. But it isn't, I think it's important to make the distinction that it's not methodologically really different than what we're doing. And some of those digital history for real projects, that's really different than what historians have been doing up until now. And I don't have the patience, I don't have the technological, I don't have the methodological knowledge to do that kind of research. And I'm not sure I have the patience at this point in my career to learn it. I love looking at it. It's certainly changed the way I teach. But I don't think it's really changed my thinking about Eisenstein or what I'm doing. It may have in some ways I'm unaware of it. Yes?
You described that you had to close down the comment section. I was wondering if you could elaborate on what type of comments you were getting. Were they,
Oh, no, they were
offensive just to be offensive, or were there?
Oh, no. I wish they were offensive to be offensive. There were Uggs trying to sell me stuff. There were all the usual suspects trying to sell me things that we don't need. And mostly it was commercial. Amazing numbers of Russian East European companies trying to sell us things. And after I wrote a blog last fall about Pussy Riot, the Russian punk band, well, the spam was out of control. But no, we actually did not, we were thinking about trying to encourage more discussion through comments. And that's, but it just, we were not able to do that. What else?
Well, Joan, thank you.
Oh, wait, one more question.
I know you have a fairly active Facebook, and it looks lovely. So do you find that the conversation has shifted to Facebook then, since they can't comment directly on the page, or did that discussion just sort of evaporate?
Yeah, there's not much discussion of the articles. On Facebook, we get likes and we get shares. And sometimes people say, wow, great article. I think maybe I've had one or two sort of questions or comments, but it's more for sort of connectivity rather than conversation. So, I mean that, when we get our story sort of set up, that's the place to go, is find a way to cultivate conversation about all of this. But no, we haven't figured that out yet. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's my understanding that digital studies has a contribution to make to academic history, and that you indicated that it's a very sophisticated set of technologies and that you personally don't draw on those. But could you talk a little bit about the way other historians pull from digital studies to advance their own research agendas?
Well, in pretty much in all the ways I can expand on the way I answered Dr. Emmons' question, because I think all of us are using online sources in the way we did it before. So the digitalization of documents is something that's really transformed the way we do our work, both in terms of our own research, but also in terms of teaching. And I think a lot of younger historians who are the main authors of blogs are using the internet to expand the topics that are accepted academic history. So, for example, a lot of blogs are posting articles that are sort of small bits of history that might not fit into a monograph or even an article. And so, by this kind of blogging is creating a new archive of writing about topics that are sort of on the margins, let's say. Or just smaller topics are just incidental to what they're doing. They may not be incidental to what someone else is doing. So people have a venue to put out there work that is maybe what they're actually doing. But in terms of how it's changing the kinds of questions that we're asking, or how it's changing the ways that we are studying history and thinking about history, the main way I think right now is spatial, because the easiest thing to do is to map. To find, and Google Maps is actually relatively easy to learn how to use. A lot of historians are using maps to augment the way they're teaching and to augment the way they're thinking about their projects in spatial terms. And then beyond that, I would say there's a lot of what they call data visualization of all kinds, not just mapping, but charting, new kinds of charts, and to emphasize different aspects of the data that they have, right? Yeah. Did that answer your question?